So if we have not met, my name is Jamie Ann Jacobin. I'm the Executive Director of the James Brummick Alliance for Craft. As many of you know, we are a nonprofit membership-based organization located here in Washington, D.C., and we have the immense pleasure of having Krystle with us today, our 2023 Chrysalis Awardee. So we usually announce the award within the year, and then we have a wonderful event. And we tried to sync it up with our Distinguished Artist Series. So some of you joined us yesterday for a talk from another fantastic textile artist in the field, actually also working with Reclaimed Textiles. So I think there's a lot of wonderful overlap this year. So if you're unfamiliar, the Chrysalis Award is an award we give to one emerging artist each year, and we cycle through different mediums. There was without a doubt no question asked that Krystle was our honoree this year in, I think, the most applications we had ever received. So I want to thank Chris Rifkin for supporting this award. And of course, Krystle, thank you for having such fantastic work that we have the privilege of honoring.
Thank you.
So Krystle is a Jamaican-born interdisciplinary visual artist, labor activist, and art educator who is currently an assistant professor at Rowan University. So Krystle had a long day actually at the university. She's calling us in from there. And Krystle, I'd love to hand it over to you to share more about your work and tell us about your practice.
Thank you. Should I go ahead and share screen now?
Sure, absolutely.
All right. Greetings, everyone. Thank you so much for being here to hear about my practice, hear a bit about my life and how my story intersects with the work that I currently do. And throughout, you're going to learn a little bit of Jamaican patois today. So when I get a little flat with my accent, beware that is just to share with you how it makes me whole, how I am a lineage from many that has come before, and how my work is inspired by these stories. I'd like to describe myself as a sister, a daughter, a cousin, a learner, a creative, and many other these things that make me whole before the things that I do for employment. I'm thankful for these employment opportunities, but before that comes the individual. And I want to make that most apparent because it is what makes me able to do all that I do here. So you see on the screen, Simia, starting with patois, the English-based Creole language from West Africa, built from this synergy of all these people that was pushed and taken to the Caribbean, specifically to Jamaica. It's a mixture of West African dialects, Taino, which is the indigenous people there prior to everything that is now in Jamaica, the Irish, the Spanish, the Portuguese, the Chinese, and German influences, much of which is mixed within my own being as an individual. Some of these backgrounds are part of my lineage. Patois is a term used widely in Jamaica, and it can refer to any language considered supposedly broken or degraded in the world. And this is taken from a university comment in Vermont. I say this to say that though the language and intention was to break a people's spirit, much has taken place, and there's a lot in resilience and a lot that can come from the ashes of what has happened. And so the direct translation of what's on the screen is, here I am. Let me lay it all for you. As was shared in the introduction, that I'm from Jamaica, and in my immigration to the States, I learned a lot about what it is to be, Black in America. Just earlier today, I shared with a colleague that is the first time I ever considered that, there was so much of these differences, though we notice it in Jamaican society, it's not as apparently it shows up in society as much as it does in the structure here in the United States. In my childhood, the experience of the transition from Jamaica to the United States has adjusted my experience in terms of food, weather, my community, and then also labor, what labor has shifted in my family, specifically from my mom, my dad, and coming from a family that were initially professionals. What now being working class individuals, what does that culture shift do to a person? And what do we learn from this experience and what can we take away? And so my dad worked at the Ministry of Labor. I learned a lot as I've been an adult about his work as a labor analyst, helping to develop the first maternity leave act in Jamaica that is now used across the Caribbean to mark what is a maternity leave for a pregnant person. And my mom worked in a secretarial field, and seeing her hard labor in that space, learning her challenges in that space, and then coming to the United States, where my dad now worked in construction and my mom works in the care economy as a nanny. I've and then myself, prior to being a professor, I was a nanny too. What have I learned from this space? So let me share a bit of that with you today. There we go. Okay, so here's some of my earlier work. Gallopop style. So this is to share that here's my deliberate effort to boast a bit and share my experiences and achievements in this space. So this is some of my most notable work where I realized I was onto something. In my last year, I think it was my junior year as a undergraduate student, I switched from graphic design to be a printmaker. And this is where I found my hand. Previously, I had done painting and intended to embark on a career in graphic design and had a whole breakdown like, oh my God, this is not for me. I like to touch paper. And in that, I gravitated to printmaking. And my advisor at the time, Martin Kruk, really, really gave me such great mentorship in completing this series I called Adoration, which was to share what I noted at the time was the Black men in my life that I felt most nourished by, and how I learned a lot from them as individuals, but then also the comfort and guidance, which you most times you are familiar to women, but I found these men also very, 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 very nurturing in many aspects. And so this work starts to explore that. I started to also incorporate patterning coming from the West African, the practice of printing on fabric like batik, and when you also think of Adinkra symbols and the use of that, which I'll share a little bit more about. And so here, this print called Guru is actually my partner. I started to explore how color and intersection of that just on paper would really start to share a story, as it also is very pictorial. Oh, it is here. Okay, sorry, I thought I was showing the image before. All right. So as been shared, that my art practice is interdisciplinary, where I am pulling a lot from relief paint, printmaking, specifically woodblock, which I still use a lot in my practice. The blocks are often MDF, this composite wood that is the after cuts that are mushed together, graded up, and then mixed with glue to compress to make this wood that is recycled, you could say. And I carving this wood and make all these really interesting patterns and pictorial images of individuals, and use that as an opportunity to share my expressions and what I see around me and the people that makes me excited. This print particularly recently, well, 2019 was, or 2018 actually, was I became a finalist at the AXA Art Prize, that is previously the XL Catalina Art Prize, and it toured the United States. This was the first big deal that I ever had in terms of showing outside of my community, and I really saw that printmaking really was my new visual language. Here, this print, I started to think a lot more about patterning not only in print, but then start to think about what would it look like in fabric. So this particular print is on paper. It's actually one of my test prints behind me. I initially started it in green and purple, and then I landed on this purple and red, which I thought was just so much more in some ways intense and in a way confrontational, but just very forward. And so not only color, but then thinking how patterns are used, specifically adinkra symbols tell these different stories. Iconography that can be used as a tool in communicating things through characters. And so this particular print in 2019, I had the opportunity to share at the International Print Center. It was included in an exhibition, was a finalist in a show there. And I really saw, okay, I really am onto something. And so I really continued this exploration and was encouraged by another faculty member while I was an undergraduate to apply for grad school. And so here's some of the work that I then developed as an undergraduate aspiring to go to grad school. This series I call Served from the Slaughter. Now, I had all these blocks, these MDF blocks of prints previously that I built into color. So they were all 3-color block prints on paper. And I thought, okay, I'm really interested in these concepts of how Black men, particularly, are seen in society. At that time, when I started working on those images, I saw how, men were being shot in the streets in America. There's total disregard. There's the structures that are all around us that discards humanity. And so I started to think more about, okay, is how what does my visual language can put to these experiences that are being showcased, but in a way that kind of harkens back to the stories of that I heard as a kid, the Anansi stories. So this particular series is a seating of like a meal seating of men seated to have a meal. And in this meal, there are self-identifying napkins that kind of tells where each person is to sit. And in the middle arranged is this sculpture that resembles roasted meat, maybe like poultry or pig. And so, yeah, but then it's adorned with these fresh produce, and over time it spoils and decays. So I thought that it harkens to this experience of disregard and how society has been treating individuals and the structures that actually impose these experiences. And on looking at the scene, I had these animals that are coming from the Anansi stories, which I'll share a little bit more about how these stories interject in this particular series to come. And so here's a little bit of a close-up on these vegetables. So all these things are things that I grew up eating so much of that I have been like missing and started to incorporate it into my artwork. So sugar cane, coming from a country that was one of the biggest sugarcane producers in the world. I mean, Jamaica was essentially, it was the place where the hardest people were bred for that labor, and there were the sugar was being exported to other nations where people just sat and enjoyed. And so I think about this devastation and the cost of of innovation and the cost of individuals' want for certain commodities and this early development of consumerism. Here's another shot of that from another angle. Some of these things like pumpkin, pomegranate, all these things are fruits, vegetables, things that I would see as a kid in Jamaica. And it brought on this new story for me when I came to America, and you're missing these things. But then there's so much that it takes to get them here. Who is picking them? What kind of labor it takes to actually get it here? I mean, it's sad to say, but I thought about that just yesterday when I learned about the bridge that that collapsed because of consumerism. A ship, hit this bridge, and how many lives were lost. People that were just going about their day, going to work, presumably. Who knows? But there's a cost to all the innovation that we have. And I just question, is all that we do worth it? That's a constant question in my work and what I reflect on. And so Anansi stories began in Ghana many generations ago. They spread by oral tradition where Africans were brought as slaves to Jamaica, and that these stories shifted. Initially, there were in the Ghanaian context, I've learned that these stories were really it stems from Anansi being this god, this mythical creature, as you would have Greek mythology, that was very smart but mischievous, troublesome, and a god, and who was changed into a spider by his father Nyame for not giving up his mischievous ways. And so within that context, there's all these characters. There's a half humanoid, like half animal or half insect, and half human. And so I'm constantly in this space of hybridity, very much like how I see my experience being from Jamaica, but have left this culture for so long where it's almost like stuck in time. But then in the American context, I'm also not fully seen as American because I sound different. In some ways, I look different. And so I'm learning from Anansi's stories and how these stories shifted from stories of moral and societal structures to, in Jamaican context, survival and civilian resilience because of slavery. And so here is my depiction of the turtle man. And he's one of the characters that pops up in the stories. I implore you to search up the Anansi stories. They're quite appealing and really, really fascinating, and gives a very unique perspective of African proverbs and just storytelling. This is Donkey Man, again, within the same context, some of which I used in the Serve to the Slaughter series. This is the Mouse Man. And then here's a more full view of the fabric that I printed. So this print I initially printed on paper. If you notice, this was the carving that I shared a little bit earlier on paper. But then I thought about what would it look like on fabric, and then built out to be this table setting. And this is when I also started to really think about how Adinkra symbols could be used to tell a story. So historically, Adinkra symbols was reserved for Ashanti kings. Over the years, however, its use has expanded to the general Akan population, who wear Adinkra cloth on significant occasions such as weddings, funerals, and so forth. And so the Adinkra symbols that I have present is the ram horns, which you can see it is the reoccurring pattern that is around the figure. So you'll see like around his head and within the pattern, that's the ram horns there. And then this is a symbol of strength in the mind, body, and soul, humility, wisdom, and learning. And then we have, I'm not using the Ghanaian word because I do not want to butcher it. And I know my partner is going to shake his head when I get home. So you're going to just hear me use the English version. So forgive me. So the talons of an eagle, you'll see that in the corners of the fabric. So each corner you see, four corners is the talons of an eagle. And that is, again, for bravery and strength. And the Sankofa, a symbol of wisdom and of learning from the past to build the future. I'm actually wearing a Ghanaian symbol here, the Adinkra symbol that I love to wear because of its symbol of strength. And then the wood comb, which you'll see in the edge of the pattern of the fabric. And this means a symbol of feminine consideration, of good feminine qualities, such as patience, prudence, and fondness, love, and care. So this is not feminine in the concept of womanhood, but feminine in the concept of this role in society. And so I found these things interesting. This was my first play with these symbols. And then I started to go a little further. Then I took this, I had this painting class. It was a experimental painting class. This is all undergrad. I'm still showing you my undergrad experience. I'm preparing for grad school. And I had this painting class at my undergraduate experience at NJCU. And so it was talking about how could I express myself as a painter, but in an alternate material. And this is where I started to think about how our clothes express this part of our identity that I don't know if for me paint was the language for. And so this is actually the beginning, the advent of me using these post-consumer fabrics. So I actually was in the process of clearing out some of my old shirts and all these, shirts from these events that you would go to or you participate in. And I thought how all these experiences made up myself as an individual as well. And so together I created this piece that is one of the first fiber pieces that I really started to delve in. All right, so this is my current practice and some of the work that have really, really taken hold in terms of how I'm thinking about my artwork and its current place in how I really process the world and my experience previously as a nanny and the experience of my family as care workers. So art practice. I wait get pop. So this term that is commonly used in Jamaica, it means anywhere it is thin, it will break. It's used in situations to describe being forced to make do with very little. And when it's done, it is done. You have to make do what you have, type of thing. And so this is where it got started with me thinking like, oh, wow, as a kid, we had very meager means, but humble means. We were still able to do a lot with the little that we have. And most apparently, my mom was the one that pioneered that, making do with what you have. And that much I took away very strongly. And in the development of this work, I went off to grad school with a bag of old children's clothes that, well, not old, but I would say gently used children's clothes that one of the families that my mom cared for was discarding, as even from for as long as I can remember as a child, when these clothes were being given away from the families that my mom would work for, or her friends. I would wear them. They became my clothes, my sister's clothes, and many of people around them, whoever needed it would get it, right? And so in this experience, I saw how the care worker was this first front to receiving these items that were in a way what is left of what is not needed anymore. And I then started to think about how these items, as they are given away and no longer of use, in some ways the care worker is maybe not necessarily wanted to be in this pocket, but is in some way also discarded when she no longer is in use to the family. Not purposefully, but just it is a job, it's a part of the economy. So in 2022, I was invited by Aferro Gallery to have a solo show titled "You Can Catch Quacky, but You Can't Catch Him Shut." So this is another Jamaican term that specifically talks about, if you can't get what you want, you just make do again with what you have. You just have to manage. There's so many ways to talk about this idea of managing. And here in my practice, I address the intricacies within the African descendants in the diaspora and the work that we currently do today. In many cases, when you first immigrate to the United States, no matter, in a lot of cases, if you didn't come even if you came as a student, you oftentimes, for a little bit of extra money, because the times are hard and the economy is tough, you're doing some sort of paid care, whether of the home or of an individual. And this has been the bare bones, the foundation of American society. So my work starts to use these tapestries with the mix of these clothes from the families that my mom cared for, my clothes, and now I'm starting to incorporate some of my sister's clothes I'll share about a later project coming up to this summer. But just these post-consumable fabrics as well as packaging to express these themes and these ideas that I'm sharing with you. So this piece is called "Come Open Your Mouth." And though one may say I am putting forward this, this idea of the mommy stereotype, I think I am kind of breaking that, because in my title, you know, I'm centering the person that is the care worker, though in society her work is not seen as to be the most valuable. But for me, it is a pillar to make America run. And so historically, Black women were forced to care for white children, which we all know. And now as marginalized workers in America, uh, I think it's important to think about how significant of a percentage of individuals work as domestic care workers, and how not everyone has a full understanding of their rights as a worker, or have very little to begin with. So as of late, domestic workers have unionized to create the National Domestic Workers Alliance. So I'm really passionate about this organization. I myself, I'm just a supporter from the outskirts, but I've been really watching their work. And its members fight, members being these are domestic workers that are currently working in this field. They fight for legislations to make and enforce laws to protect their basic rights on the job. My work highlights the work that they do and their dedicated role to keep their job and pay their bills. Though no longer physically in bondage, the ideology of colonialism and imperialism, a structure built on with the Black women's bodies, persist to present day, but refashioned. A large minority of people of color are now held captive economically and are disproportionately denied basic resources to thrive. During the Great Depression in the 1930s, mass uprisings among workers forced the federal government to pass groundbreaking new labor legislation. So this is what we call now the Fair Labor Standards Act of 1938. And it was a centerpiece of these programs collectively called the New Deal. And this act enabled the 1933 National Industrial Recovery Act. All this to say that in the midst of the building of this labor law, women and individuals specifically in the domestic care field, agriculture field were left out. Why? Because of racism, because we had to strike a deal with the South that at that time was segregated to have a labor law, but not supporting the individuals that really did need it the most. And so to this day, there is no federal labor law that supports agriculture workers and domestic care workers. And so my work is to highlight not only the gap in that, but the work that organizations that are doing on the ground to grassroots organize around this fact. This is what the care economy looks like. This is how much it is worth. This is why there is no laws around it. There is a lot of investment in this area. There is a lot of money to be made, and there's a lot of exploitation as well in this field because of lack of knowledge and lack of structures to protect individuals. Here again, the National Domestic Workers and their work. I'm so amazed by all that they do and all that these individuals are doing to fight for themselves and others around them. I'm just so excited for all the wins that they have in their future. So their vision specifically is they want to make sure that children, the elderly, and people with disabilities have the care and support that they need. They want to bring an end to racism, sexism, classism, xenophobia, ableism, and any other attack on our communities, specifically those that are really not supported as much as they need to be in society. They want an economy and a democracy that will truly work for all. I encourage all of you to take a closer look at this organization. And if anything that I'm sharing is within your values, I do encourage you to also donate, among many other organizations that I will share coming along in my presentation. One thing to note that in a landmark victory for labor rights. The New Jersey, this organization, the New Jersey General Assembly passed the New Jersey Domestic Worker Bill. And this particular bill includes established written agreements to make sure that documented hours for the worker is met, wages and duties, and then also mandatory meal, rest breaks, and protection against retaliation. All of these things are included in this bill, and it's only currently in 10 states. Only 10 states have signed, so there's still a long ways to go. I say all of this to say that it is even that much more important, because a bill is only as active as those that know that it exists and can make sure that it is then implemented, make sure that it is being followed. So I want to make you all aware for that. And 50,000 domestic workers are currently in this state and are being protected by this bill. Specifically, the state I'm in, New Jersey. So here's some of my one of the very first piece that I made in this series. I know I shared another before, but this first piece in my series is not made out of, oh, I didn't share it yet. So my slides are a little bit mixed up on my end. Okay, so my use of materials are non-precious and repurposed objects joined to the excess consumption of capitalism produces. And it really, truly devours both people and natural resources in its path. This piece, this is what I was saying, is one of the first pieces in my series. And I found it so moving how many people are from those with much means and are very little connect with the experience of the individual in this the subject in this composition. And specifically, I had the strangest occurrence to run into A$AP Rocky, if anyone's familiar. And he was very interested in the work that I did from Instagram, and then had a sit down conversation with him and learned that his mom at one point was a care worker and connected with the piece so far that he now has it in his collection. That was the most interesting way that I saw that my work connected with individuals outside of individuals in my community. So this goes across all different class and color and space and time, I see. I use patois dialect, satire, and repurposed materials as tools to activate my artwork's narrative. This direct references Jamaican culture, which is my own. And then these items are specifically related to domestic labor. So you'll see these baby clothes, the upholstery fabric I'm getting from people that are stores discarding upholstery fabric. I'm using packaged goods that you would find specifically in, when you buy organic, and just this idea of particular class and individuals using these materials, using these clothes, and in a lot of cases they're unaware of the impacts that they are making on society and the structures that they are upholding. Most of Jamaican nation is employed in domestic service work as cleaners, seamstresses, farmers, and in manufacturing, earning quite meager salaries. Arduous labor is built into the fiber of my culture. Often, my people take these skills abroad, seeking positions that promise higher salaries. And these funds are then stretched far to not only support their loved ones here in the US, but also back home. And so a little bit of my process, I've often within my household with my mom, we share these images when I was also a nanny of what her day was like. And this was this point of connection to express how their day was going, and various things that the children were doing that in many cases I came to meet and know these children that she cared for, and would do the same when I was a nanny, sharing some of the experience just personally between us. And so I became inspired by these images and would use them as a starting point and inspiration to start these composition. So here is kind of how I am blocking out and creating this pattern as one would potentially create a quilt. However, I do not quilt. I don't have a history of quilting within my family or within my my heritage, but I find it very inspiring how this structure is kind of a way of patching my fabrics together to then create visual composition that's quite dynamic. And then here I show on the right some of the printmaking aspects of carving a block, the tools that I would use to achieve that. This piece is America Sun Different E. Just thinking about how how this space one is in the United States is just different from home. This place that we called home, and the experiences that we bring with us, and the stories that not only impact the care worker's family, but then the family that they spend the most time with, also caring for. I remember as years ago, my mom was caring for this child, and the child would say Pope. Anybody on this call that is Jamaican would know that what Pope is flatulence. And so, you know, as he's using the restroom, he's learning to be potty trained. That was one of the first words I think he started to learn. And I just found it so comical. And my mom would audio record him and would listen to it, and we would just die with laughter. And I just find this like small way of cultural exchange just fascinating. And this is evident here in some of the works that I'm creating, where I'm not only sharing this close exchange, but the closeness that's built between the care worker and the child, that although this space is an economy, there is also a true relationship that's built in this experience. Here is another piece that kind of not focuses on the body, but this very intimate interaction when you care for someone, when you put on their shoes, whether it's a child or an adult, but everyone is familiar with such a viewpoint. And here's when I start to really think three-dimensionally, not only in the formal aspects of the mode of care, what does one do in these spaces, and who does this care, and who experiences care. But then I started to think about the internal psyche and emotion of the individual that goes through these long days as a care worker, oftentimes a full-time nanny. I've never really been a full-time nanny. I've been a babysitter, and those that has ever done care work knows the difference between a nanny and a babysitter. A babysitter is kind of like the fill-in. We don't do full days, we do part-time, maybe 3 or 4 days, but a nanny is there Monday through Friday, often from 7 to 6 or so, from sun up to sundown, I would say. And there is this, I feel, based on the exchange and the interaction I've had with nannies, and specifically within my family, my mom, there's this internal dialogue, or then a lack of, where you're kind of on automation. You're on like just doing what you must do to get through the day. And what does that mean? So this piece I called Just Always a Stick Like Glue. And I just started to think about this, you know, this idea of individuals having to work through the day, and, you know, just have all these children just need you, and you have to figure out how to prioritize that, and all that comes with juggling all the responsibilities of that. And so this I started to express in these stuffed animals as this ready-made object to interact with each other to create these feelings and evoke these emotions. Here's another piece that also I start to really think about my relationship with my mom and the work that she did, and not being in that work anymore. How does that change our relationship? How does my shift, you know, as now an educator, and the just the paths have changed, what has been gained and what has been lost within in our interaction and our relationship. And so let me wash your foot and drink your water is a performance piece, but also a piece that thinks about that experience. Yeah, if you're Jamaican, you will know when somebody said that to you. It's often not necessarily positive, but it is a reality. I kind of put it as a question. What if? What if I washed your feet and drink your water? What else? What else can I do? And so thinking about that. and then bag and pan. And so in Jamaica, there's this like idea of like every year the Erica Badu song called Bag Lady. It's kind of thinking about that all your commotions, like all your things, you just pack it up and you go. And oftentimes you think about immigration as you come to this country, you have 1 or 2 suitcases, and you have to just make do with that. And you carry your most favorable belongings. And so I'm thinking about this like internal belongings that we carry and we move through in various spaces. Here, hush no mind, the idea of like, soothing someone, whether soothing yourself, soothing your loved one, and the lack of not being able to soothe your family because you're on the job caring for, giving your prime time to the individuals that you are paid to care for. You can lie down, but this is not for you. I remember fondly a newborn that my mom was taking care of many years back. She mentioned that he would kind of push to almost like want to breastfeed from him because so early was his mom had to go back to work, and my mom was caring for this child. And I just found it so interesting. She's I think in passing in conversation about this child, she said this, and I thought it was so interesting. I wonder what would that look like if it was expressed within these stuffed animals. So this series, I started to really think about myself and my sister as children of the care worker that works all these long hours. What is left for us? The primary care, the ability of that attention and adept needs are given to the people that are paying for this care. And so I started to create compositions of this, what is left of my larger tapestry pieces. And so this is a series of that. And these two actually recently were collected by the University of Texas, Austin with Africana Studies Department, which was really special. I'm also really active in making sure that my work is seen in spaces in the K through 12. Initially in my undergrad, I was going to be trained as a K through 12 educator, but I saw that my calling was in higher ed, and so but I still do find opportunities to engage with high school students. So this has been something that I continue to do. This was an installation that I started at the Petty School in New Jersey. Here, I was a participant of the Time and Space Residency at Guttenberg Arts in New Jersey. This is also a great organization that I have a wonderful relationship with. Shout out to Russ, the director there. And they really support emerging artists and making space and just literally time, supported with funds to really help artists be able to create and really develop their practice. So thankful for that organization as well. And this is just a visual of how these patterns then become fabric that is placed together to then be sewn. So this is how I've created a key in my sketchbook of the fabrics that's needed to create the composition. And then I'm literally, each of these P's, W's are being cut in pieces to then create the composition there. This was my residency that I did at the Lynn John Kenwood Fellowship of Equity at Gallery Aferro in Newark. Sadly, they're closing this year, but that was very awesome to be a part of. And so I'm gonna start to move a little faster and get closer to talk about my social practice and how I activate my work, because I think my artwork is a stepping stone. I love what I do as an artist, but I'm really a passionate person in social practice. So here, you're going to learn a little bit more patois. So we lick about with talawa. So if you know what that means, it means that we are small, but we are strong and fearless. We are mighty. There's much that we can do. You remember what we talk about MEGA means? Now we're talking about how strength is built into this. All right. So recently I was able to show work at a benefit with Show Me the Signs with the organization called African American Policy Forum. And this exhibition was a fundraiser to help support Dr. Kimberly Crenshaw's work in the African American forum to support Black families who lost loved ones to gun violence. Over $100,000 was donated through this fundraiser, and all the artwork were auctioned and earned that amount to support this effort. And it was then showed in Hyperallergic. Was pretty cool. And then while I was in Florida in grad school, much was happening there, and I wanted to see how I could be of support and make use of some of my skills. And so I developed a mentorship program at my graduate program at University of South Florida. And here it was a program to share how undergraduate students that were looking for opportunities within the arts could partner with grad students that had projects and had research that they were developing, and how together they could work on these projects, and undergraduates developing experience, and graduate students learning how to work with an assistant and develop research to complete towards a project that an advisor would help to guide them both in. And so this was the first cohort, myself having an assistant, Gia, and my friend Bonnie and her assistant. So this was Sophia, which was really a great experience. This, I was able to participate. I was invited to be in the Feminist Futures, which was an MIT hackathon. And so this was really awesome, where I shared how the care economy, some of what I'm sharing with you here today, and how understanding these issues can help benefit individuals in the future. Here, this organization, Suncoast Black Arts Collective, another organization that is trying to make sure that art education and art just in general, artists in Florida are being seen. The organization's director, Michelle, is just such a pillar in her community, and she works with so many other collectives to make this happen. Right now, they're working on building relationships with museums to make sure that there is some pathway for artists of African descent to be shown in the museums in Florida, and supporting other initiatives across the United States. So if you do have funds to spare, this is another great place to put it. Here is some of the work and workshops that I facilitate with local organizations to support accessibility within the arts for individuals with various abilities, mostly adult students, but I also worked with youth students as well. And here's some of students also working. And then I also have a podcast. After my experience as within the MFA program, I saw where there is a gap in understanding as to how to really support students of color. And myself and co-host Marlene Tobias has developed this podcast called The Hidden Critique. And essentially it is it's a space to allow for us to critically examine our experience going through this MFA process. And it is a show that aims to support aspiring current and postgraduate MFA students in navigating higher education and the elusive fine art industry. And so if this resonates with you, this is also a place to learn and share some of those funds to help us keep making this work. And last but not least, this is what I'm currently exploring, and where my research is going forward. So recent explorations. We depend. So this is what I'm up to. So I currently have this piece at the Susquehanna Art Museum in Harrisburg, PA, upcycled, which is super excited to be invited to be a part of that. It facilitates as a moving museum for students to be able to experience art. The theme in this exhibition, curated by Bonnie, who was also a partner in developing the mentorship program, and also one of the directors there, has been such a great person to be able to also brainstorm some of these ideas, and so being invited to participate in this has been really amazing. And then so I'm right now I'm thinking a lot about the cost of resilience and chasing the American dream. There's much that's lost in that, and I think that as I have gained much, I do think we have to think about the sustainability of where we are in consumerist culture, how has colonialism and imperialism has affected us, and where do we go from here? How do we can make changes to make sure that everyone is included in our futures, and then also our environment is being considered. So I think that there's much push for grind culture, and it affects indigenous cultures and losing of the diversity in all of our experiences. I particularly focus today on sharing some patois with you because my language, this dialect that I share with you today, is an evidence of what has taken place. If I do not speak patois, the experiences of my past, the people that have made me who I am, is lost. And so this is why I'm so passionate about sharing this with you. This piece that's on the screen is called Hard Pockets, Who Do We Trust? This was a question that was posed to me some years ago. And yeah, I trust was lost between myself and someone. And I'm exploring what does that mean for me now, and how do I move forward as a relationship is broken, and what can be learned from that experience. Here is another exploration of that. This piece called Hard Pockets. She believe in man and God, something like that, I think. Oh, she did say, me believe in man and God. This was something that was said to me when I was a child. And I'm curious, do I still know anything? Do I know anything at all? In my own family, I've seen and experienced firsthand how one's pushing for financial abundance shifts values to individualism and self-growth disconnected from community. I know we all do our best with the information we have access to at the time that we have access to it, but the values of individualism is colonialism and builds the patriarchy and is cancerous. And to the growth of our society, it will not hold up. It's just not sustainable. It's clear to me more than ever that money alone cannot change societal's problems. We all face this. This needs to be paired with the collective action of all. So in all the resources I've shared with you today, I do hope that you take action supporting some of these organizations and do what feels right to you. So this summer, I've been invited to Casa Santa Ana in Panama City. I am going to explore my paternal side of my family, my great-great-great-grandfather, who went to World War I, was actually, he was in the army there, within the British Army. And then he also then left and went to Panama to help build the Panama Canal. And in that experience, he survived. How many people died building the Panama Canal? Again, another cost to or push for innovation. Was it worth it? I don't know. The Panama Canal is slowly losing the amount of water it needs to push ships through. Lasted 100 years. How much life has been lost for that? Let's wait. We can weigh that and see for ourselves if progression and to the level that we are moving in society is worth it. And so in this trip, I intend to explore my the archived images of individuals that worked on the canal, the terrain, and really be inspired to create pieces around that story and my family's experience. So a few things I want to leave you with. A friend of mine sent me this IG post. Shout out to Mr. Brown. And this brought me to really confront the ideas of how we're not that far from the experiences of individuals that were once in bondage. I want it to be utmost clear that it takes us all to make a change for our society, not only talking within our communities, but acting politically to change the structures that disadvantages some. My work is just a small stepping stone to make this larger experience that we have to change possible. And so not only do I implore you to action, I really hope that these things resonate with you and to some of the experience that you have and that to know that you are seen. In closing, using repurposed materials has become essential to how I contextualize the subject matter that are important to me. I think my investigation of these themes are extremely necessary to reflect and make cultural shifts. In continuing my work, my artwork, and my research, I aim for it to live in this larger archive of showing Caribbean people as multifaceted individuals, doing the work that allows America and other Western nations to function. Thank you.
I'm clapping, Krystle. You can't see me. Um, hey, Jackie, if you guys want to turn on your video, unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time for questions, but I think when the jurors were speaking about your work and they were talking about the intricate processes and your contemporary narratives of care and labor, I think we absolutely saw that in your presentation today. And I think what was so interesting is we have created this award as an organization to really amplify your voice. And I feel like we absolutely picked the right person because you came here today to amplify the voice of others. And I think that's so phenomenal. So if you want to turn on your video, I think we'll just kind of give a round of applause as our Chrysalis awardee. I'm so sorry we don't have time. I really want to talk about your process. We're all process. But it's so, just congratulations to you, our 2023 Chrysalis awardee. And some of you might remember at the beginning of COVID, we learned how to, applause with sign language. So absolutely to you, Krystle.
Thank you. Thanks so
Congratulations.
much for giving me this opportunity.